Good evening, everyone. So I know it's 7 o'clock, but we're going to give everyone a few more minutes to log on here, and then we'll officially get started. Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening once again. My name is Shayla Merritt, and I sit on the Black Alumni Council for the University of South Carolina. I'm actually going to give you guys a quick little overview of BAC. I was told that I didn't have to do this, but then I thought that there might be a few of you guys on the call who actually might not be that familiar with who the organization is and what we do. So formerly the Black Alumni Caucus, BAC was formed in 1979 to identify and recruit Black graduates to the Alumni Association. In recent years, BAC has used its platform to encourage greater engagement of Black alumni in university affairs, and we host signature events like our Building the Future event, which offers a platform to mentor, educate, support, and inform the next generation of alumni. The group, which we are most commonly known for, we established the Richard T. Greener Scholarship, which was named for the first Black faculty member at the University of South Carolina. This scholarship was the first endowed fund for Black students at the university. BAC has also donated funds to name a room in the Pastides Alumni Center after the prestigious alumnus. And throughout the conversation, I'll drop our social media handles. We would love to have you guys follow us online. We update our social media outlets pretty frequently with events that we have coming up. We highlight various Black alumni, as well as members of the council. We do a lot. So we encourage all of you guys to follow us. And once the conversation gets started, I'll definitely make sure to drop how you can follow us in the chat box. Also, before we get started, speaking of the chat box, I also want to encourage every single person who's on the call. If you guys have a question throughout this discussion, please feel free to drop your question or your comments in the chat. We'll be referring back to that throughout the entire conversation. So right now, I'm gonna actually have Maria and Dominique kind of take themselves off the mute really quickly. And I'm going to jump into giving you guys kind of a brief overview of who Ms. Hickman is. I apologize. It is a Monday. I will reclaim my voice. I promise you it's been a very long day, y'all, but I'm gonna get it together, I promise, because I am super excited for this conversation. Dominique can tell you, as we were preparing to have Ms. Hickman on tonight, I was just super excited. And there were a number of times where Dominique had to kind of tell me to like rein it in. But we're looking forward to this conversation tonight. So we're gonna jump right into it. For all of you on the call, this is actually part 3 of our Black Leadership series that we've been doing this year. And so I'm going to jump right into telling you guys a little bit about Ms. Hickman. I apologize in advance because I know she is probably going to be a little uncomfortable while I sit here and read all of her accolades, but that's okay, is what we do. So Maria Hickman is the Executive Associate Athletics Director, SWA, and Chief Diversity Officer for the University of South Carolina Athletics Department. Her primary responsibilities include serving as the sport administrator for women's basketball and beach volleyball. Hickman also has oversight of sport administrator meetings, creation and oversight of Department Diversity and Inclusion Committee, as well as execution of Departmental Diversity Action Plan. In her role as a senior woman administrator, Hickman participates in SEC governance. She is currently a member of the NCAA Progress Towards Degree Waivers Committee. She arrived at the University of South Carolina in 2007 and served as an academic advisor for football. Throughout the years, she was promoted to Director of Academics and assisted with building academic excellence while graduating student athletes at a high percentage. She was then promoted to Associate Athletics Director for Academics and Student Development on January of 2013 to oversee the Dottie Anderson Academic Center and daily academic and student development operation for all student athletes. In 2015, she was promoted to Senior Associate Athletics Director for Academics and Student Development. Hickman serves as a member of the Athletic Department's senior staff and the University Athletics Advisory Council. She also reports directly to the Provost Office. So prior to South Carolina, Hickman worked at the University of Richmond, where she served as an academic coordinator with the football, baseball, field hockey, and lacrosse teams and life skills coordinator. A native of Statesville, North Carolina, Hickman graduated from Mars Hill College with a dual bachelor's degree in business administration and sports management and earned her master's degree in sports administration from the University of Louisville. And with that, Dominique, I'm going to turn everything over to you.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to talk directly to Ms. Maria Hickman today. And we are excited for you to get to know her through the many roles that she fills at the university. So Maria, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And as we heard in your bio, you have 3 different roles mainly: Executive Associate Athletics Director, Senior Woman Administrator, and Chief Diversity Officer, all within the Department of Athletics. So can you talk to us about those 3 roles?
Sure. So the bio explains some of it, but as Executive Associate AD, as she explained, I have oversight of women's basketball and beach volleyball. But I mean, before any of that begins, as an administrator, like our number one goal is to make sure that our student athletes are having a great experience. And that's in the classroom, that's in their sport, but then that's also in the community. So on a daily basis, as we're making decisions and we're thinking through things, it's all about the student. We would not be here if it wasn't for the student athlete. But I do have direct oversight over women's basketball and beach volleyball. And so that's just working with those coaches and those students to make sure that they have what they need as far as, I mean, I attend games, I travel, work through budgets, anything they need within their program, just making sure that they're taken care of. And that's sort of like being the liaison between that coach and that sport with the AD. So the AD can't physically have those conversations with every coach. So that's sort of where the sport administrator comes into play, is you're acting in that role with those coaches and with those students to make sure that he's kept abreast of everything that's going on within their sport, and just making sure that, you know, everything is taken care of. So on the sports side, that's sort of where we are. I do still have oversight of academics. I'm not doing the day-to-day, but they do still report to me. Student athlete development directly reports to me as well. So that's 2 other staffs that I oversee, and then just working within the department, doing all staff meetings, putting together sport administrator meetings. We have committees. So it's putting together the committees that we have and making sure they're tasked with what they're supposed to do for the year and just following back up. So other odds and end jobs that I have throughout the department. as far as like that executive associate sport administrator role. The SWA role is a role that is, if you look around the nation, the NCAA has each institution designate one female. And so when they initially started that role was to make sure that women had meaningful positions and were at the table when decisions were being made. I do think we've come a long way to where sometimes that's not needed. And really at each institution, that role looks a little different. I think we've done a great job here of making sure that women are included and that we do have a seat at the table without having that designation. But I think the biggest part for me with the SWA is working with the conference office, working on governance, working on legislation. Like this COVID year, it was a lot about changing the rules. What do things look like? Are we going to play? How many games are we going to play? And the SWAs had a big part of that, of making sure that travel looked the same. Like our soccer team played fall and spring. How many games are we going to play? Are we going to allow them to play non-conference? And a lot of that came from that group of meeting. We met weekly during COVID. We're now to bi-weekly meetings. So that's all the SWAs and the SEC. And we would make those decisions based off of, the information that we had at the time with the COVID stuff. So I think, like I said, it looks different at every institution. But I feel like here at South Carolina, we've done a great job of making sure that women are at the table anyway. But that's sort of where that designation comes from. And then diversity officer. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say that's the one we want to hear about because I know that that's one of your new roles at the university.
Yep. So that's one of my new roles. So the NCAA again came and said that each institution has to designate one person as their chief diversity officer. I will say we were doing the work before that title came. And so I was on campus. We have the Council of Diversity Officers, Academic Diversity Officers, CADO. And so I was a group of that. I was a group that attended that. So I represented athletics, but like each major department has their own diversity officer, and we come together in that unit. And so when that group was formed and I was able to sit on that for athletics, I went to our AD and said, hey, I'm on this group with campus. I think within athletics, we need to create a committee. Can I get a group of people and we can start working on this? And he was like, great idea. And that was about 3 years ago. So I didn't have the title, but I was still already doing the work. And at that time, we focused a lot on things for our students. So we created a Black student athlete group called GAME. We created a group for women called Shiro. And we began to meet with those groups and those students because I had a lot of Black student athletes say they were coming from inner cities. I'm the only Black person in my class, or, I'm having a hard time, adjusting. They may be the only Black person on their team. And so it was trying to find a safe space for students, but then doing the same thing for the women. Because a lot of times as women, we don't speak up for ourselves. So it was like, how can we teach these young women before they leave how to have a voice and how to speak up for themselves and how to, use the things that they have to make them better and not just be complacent with where they are. So we sort of started with more student groups, but this past year focused a lot more on our staff and our coaches and what we can do as an entire department. So that's sort of, I've been in that role for a year. That came like, I think August is when I got that title, but had already been doing that work that a lot of people didn't know.
And that's really what I wanted to highlight because I've known you personally since your time at the Doty, and I know the work that you've been putting in athletics for our university, for our students, for our Black students, and for our women student athletes. And so can you talk about, and I know that we kind of said it's uncomfortable when we have to talk about the things that we've done, but can you talk about some of the things that you did in your role at the Doty and how you bring that to your current role? You kind of just did, but just kind of help everyone understand that you've been here.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I started here in 2007, so I've seen a lot of change. We didn't have the Doty Academic Center when I started. I mean, we were creative with what we did. But for me, it's always been, you got to have empathy. You got to learn and build that relationship with the student. Instead of just labeling somebody, figure out who they are, figure out why they did or what they did or what they said or why they will not do what you need them to do. Like everyone's here for a reason. And I feel like a lot of students sometimes get overlooked. A lot of students get a label placed on them as, oh, well, you're only here for your sport. And sometimes a student just needs somebody to pour love into them and to show them that you're worthy and you are supposed to be here. And once they get that, it's just so crazy how you can see the light bulb go off, and you can see how they want to do better and they know that they can do better and they get excited about learning. And so for me, it's always been an advocate for the student. I think that's been the biggest thing that's been important to me, is just making sure that they know someone cares and having a voice, someone has your voice. Someone will be the voice for you in that room when you're not in the room. And so that's what's driven me. That's what's made me want to do this, and just to see them do better. But I mean, graduation is a big deal. I don't live on the GPAs. We've done really well in the academic center with having 3.0s, and I don't live on the GPAs. It's about making sure that student is better than they were than on that first day that they walked in the building. If they leave here and they have their degree and they learn something about themselves and life and they're better than they were when they first walked in the door, we've done our job. And that's always been my philosophy.
And I think that that is very evident. And you just shared that that is one of your top priority is the advocating for the student athlete. Can you talk about some of your other priorities in your roles?
Yeah, I think diversity, there has not been one day since I got this title that we haven't done something or I haven't done something related to the diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, like this year, we came out and we rolled out an 8-step plan for our department. And I think we've done everything but one thing right now. And it is a range of community engagement, staff education, student education, making sure that we're increasing our minority and small vendors, looking at our hiring practices and retention practices, and doing some workshops with that. We've created an athletic advisory committee. So we have prominent people in the community who come and they give our athletic director advice if some things are going on or something that we need a heads up on, or we should be looking at something a different way. They're open and they're honest, and we meet quarterly. And so that's been very good. But I think the big thing for me this year has been centered around diversity and inclusion, and just making sure that we're not only equipping our students and our coaches on how to deal with it, because it's not going away, but we're making sure that we're bringing different people to the table, that we are being inclusive in this department, and we continue to grow and get better. Because this isn't a thing that you snap your fingers and it's fixed. So we understand that here. We have some open and uncomfortable conversations. And I think that was new for a lot of people in this department, but I think that we've grown over this year, and I think we'll continue to do that.
And I know that's a result of your leadership. Talk about some of the challenges and issues specifically that you guys have been facing, student athletes especially, that they've been facing this year with so many in the news, so much going on, and student athletes directly dealing with things. Just talk to us about some of the things and challenges that y'all have faced.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this year, we had the pandemic with everything that was COVID related, where we didn't know whether we would play, will we have a season, what will that look like? And so, I mean, it was from modifying how you travel. I mean, we had some teams travel the day up. It was changing seasons where we had soccer and volleyball not only play in the fall semester, but play in the spring semester. So that was totally new, changing the amount of games. I think that was a big adjustment because it was also class time. Classes were mostly virtual. So it was like, how do you do that? Which meant tutoring went to virtual. So it was like the way that we communicated, because we're very big on building relationships with our students and making sure we see them and can have that touch point. That was very different. And it was so like, how do you adjust and still be successful? And we figured it out. It took some time, but we figured it out. But I do think everything that happened in the summer, with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and just the fact that race was now in our face and you couldn't run from it. It was like, how are you going to deal with it? How are we going to move forward? And we had students and staff and coaches who were all dealing with this and dealing with it in different ways. And it was like, how do we bring each other together and have conversations so that we all can be on the same page? So I think it was a challenging year all around, but I do think that it allowed us to grow. It allowed us to learn from each other. We did some staff like town halls that were not mandatory, but we would have over 100 of our staff members join and just have an open conversation about what had, the events that had occurred over the summer. And then those led to some education sessions where we had education sessions for the department once a month. And then we did some student-led education by teams, and they were able to pick what topics they want, and we would bring in presenters to make sure that they got what they needed. But it was eye-opening, I'm not gonna lie. And I think it made you deal with some emotions that you haven't dealt with before. Even myself, I mean, it made me say, okay, I'm not just walking in the office because this affects me. And how do I still go in and do my job when I don't really know what I'm feeling? So, I mean, it was an interesting year by far.
Can you talk to, well, we did see some of the student athletes come out and create platforms and make statements. We saw Coach Don Staley's article in the Players Tribune, Black People Are Tired. And how did you support these athletes and coaches, as well as your department, to even use this platform and use this time?
Right. We were very big on trying to have some conversations with our coaches and equip them to say, hey, have conversations with your teams. Like, what are they thinking? Just because you don't have Black people on your team doesn't mean that they're not feeling something. And so it was like very big and a push to trying to help them with the education. Some teams I went and spoke with, coaches wanted me to speak with them. So there were some teams that I went and had that conversation. Of course, the national anthem was a big deal because it was like, what are you going to do as a team? My big thing that I try to make sure coaches understood was know what's going to happen before you get to that field. And so we had frank conversations about, what are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? And we wanted teammates to understand why certain ones were making decisions that they were. And I think that was the most important thing, because if you walked into this and you weren't prepared, this could tear a team apart. But if you go in and you're together and you understand the why, then you're more unified than you've ever been. And so we had to have some team discussions on what is a team going to do and why certain people made decisions that they were. I love Coach Staley's article. I'm gonna be honest, because when she first wrote that article and I read it, it was a sigh of relief for me, because at that time I'm trying to figure out what should I do for the department? How am I going to lead these discussions? And I didn't know what I felt. I mean, you had those two things that played out nationally. I have a young son, and I'm just sitting here thinking, what am I going to tell him when he gets older? And so for me, you go through anger, you go through sadness, you go through, am I important? And you had all these emotions that you didn't know how to put words to, or at least I didn't. And when I read that article, for me, it was like, it was a sigh of relief, because it was like, that's how I feel. I'm tired. Like, it all makes sense on everything that I'm feeling now. I'm tired. And I either text her, or I just remember telling her, like, thank you for writing that, because now that makes sense for me. And there's times where I think she gets a bad rap because she is so vocal, but someone said to me one time, she says the things that other people can't say. And so there's some people in the department who make feel like they can't say what she's saying, but they feel what she's saying. So she's that voice for a lot of people. And at times I don't think she realizes that. But I'm appreciative of that. I support her. I support her team. I know they got a lot of flack this year for the stance that they took. But what most people don't realize, that wasn't her telling them what to do. That was that group of young ladies being strong, making a tough decision, and deciding to sit during the national anthem. And they got a lot of flack. But for me, that's courageous, because at that age, I don't know what I would have done, to be quite honest. But it was very courageous for them to take a stand and say, this is what we believe in. And then she supported them. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a long answer. I hope I answered it, but
I think you did a great job. I got goosebumps as you were talking about it, because I remember attending those games and being in the stands, and being grateful to be in the stands and be able to see them play, in person live, but also hearing the chatter and the comments from the fans about their decision. But what I love is exactly what you said. They were unified. They were unified, and it didn't cause division amongst the team. And it was very courageous, especially where we live, where we play. And so we were very proud of that, the team, Coach Staley, and you and the department, and how you supported students during this time. And as we kind of talk about that, want to shift a little bit more, not just about student athletes, but about female student athletes and the discrepancies that we see in the treatment of female student athletes, whether it's the pay equity or the quality of accommodations, just to name a few. So talk to us about what that means to you, especially as a Black woman in this role.
As a Black woman and a former student athlete, I think a lot of times people just think, oh, you're a woman, just be happy you can play. And I think that's been the history of some of the sports, of things not being equal and females not getting the same treatment. I know a lot of people say it's the revenue, the men's sports are producing the revenue. But if you look at the following of a lot of women's sports, it's right up there, if not better than some of the men's sports. And just as successful. I mean, our women's sports here are very successful. So if you look at that, it's just like, okay, what are we doing? I don't feel like we have that issue here. I think Coach Tanner's done a great job of making sure facilities are equitable and our women and are getting the same treatment as the men as well as the coaches. But I do think when you look at some of the pro leagues, like the pay is not equitable, and the talent and the experience of what they're putting on the court or on the field is better than some of the men, if you really want to talk about it. I don't think it's fair, but I do think that it's coming to light more, so that I do think that you'll see some changes slowly, because women are realizing that we have a voice, we can speak up, we can be heard, and people want to hear us. And I think at times it's like, oh, okay, let me just go play, let me go do my part and then move on. And that's not good enough anymore. So I do think you'll slowly see those changes, and it helps when you have other people saying it that's not women. So now that we have more men speaking up as well to say, this isn't fair, this isn't equitable, I think that helps because it's not just the women saying it.
And that's really a really powerful statement, because it takes everyone to push the change forward, I think. And I think that is important, that we also help people understand that equity doesn't mean same. It doesn't mean equal. It means, that when you're looking at the resources and everything available, that is treated fairly. And people really don't understand that a lot. They think, I think one of the most famous things that has been misinterpreted was when Asia tweeted about LeBron's contract, and everybody said, oh, she thinks she's supposed to be paid as much as LeBron. And she was like, that's not what I said. I never said that. But I do feel like my work should be as valued. And I do work as hard, and I should be compensated that way. So I think it is important that people gain an understanding. How do you feel like, what are some things that you would love to see alumni support you in, support the department in, as far as pushing forward that change and really being agents of change for all of us in our community?
Yeah, I think we have great alumni, to be quite honest. And especially in athletics, we're always trying to find how can we get them more involved? How can we get them involved in some of our programming? How can we get them to touch some of our students? And so I think it's more on us to be more creative to get you all involved. Because I think the want is there, but it's like, okay, I know they want it, but now how can I use it? So for me, I think it's more of how can we use that momentum and those people who want to help out, to get you more involved, because I think it's already there. We just have to be more creative to utilize it.
Well, we're definitely here for you. So I'd love to connect more, so that we can support you guys and what you do for our student athletes. All right, so we're gonna do some rapid fire questions. I like these because it's lighthearted. So just think in the terms of like this or that. So I'm gonna shoot some things at you and you gotta choose quickly, okay? That's the part.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Garnet or black?
Black.
Favorite season?
Fall.
Favorite athletic season?
Basketball.
Pepsi or Coke?
Pepsi.
Podcast or book?
Book.
So what are you reading right now? Is there anything in particular that you're reading?
Yeah, we have a book club, so I'm reading the new Jim Crow. So I'm reading that. But I think out of all the books we've read, Stamped's been my favorite. We read that a couple months back. That was a good one.
I met Jason Reynolds. He came to the University of South Carolina actually in fall of 2019. Excuse me, spring of 2019. And it was amazing to meet him. And he's a wonderful, he has actually been the Library of Congress's youth advocate. And it's just been amazing to see the work that he's done in the books. I love Stamp too, as you can tell. If you haven't read it out there, y'all, I suggest
read it.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
All right. All-time favorite food.
Oh, I'm a dessert girl. Brownies and ice cream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most memorable sport victory.
Ooh, if I'd say here, it's I think it was 2005, the year we beat Alabama in football. Man, I will never forget how that stadium was rocking. I mean, you could feel the stadium moving. It was just, I believe it was 2005, that year that they came here and we beat Alabama and they were highly ranked. I will never forget that. That was a game that was, it was crazy. It was one to remember.
Okay, all right, that's a good one. So I think those are all I have. So now we're gonna turn over to the chat and see if there are any questions there. Or Shayla, if you have some questions, we want to open this time up for the audience and the people that are participating to have some questions for Maria. We really just felt like tonight was a good opportunity for you to get to know her. As we said, Maria has been here. Some people think that the university just got her during the height of Black Lives Matter and was like, let's put somebody. We're like, no, Maria has been here doing this work since 2007 and really supporting our athletic department and our student athletes. And so we're excited for you to get to know her and what she's doing here.
So I actually have a couple of questions because, you know, that's how I am. But one of the things that really like struck me and I was jotting down like a whole bunch of notes while you were talking, but one of the things that I literally circled and starred here on my paper was when you were talking about the staff training that you guys provided this past year in lieu of everything that was, you know, taking place in the world. And I felt like that just struck a chord with me because I think that oftentimes like that's the piece that's often overlooked. Start talking about, you know, wanting to have meaningful conversations surrounding diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so I was just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that. Like, was the staff receptive to that? Were there takeaways that maybe things that they just didn't even think about that they now needed to be just a little bit more cognizant of? Because you touched on a lot. I mean, you were talking about how a lot of these athletes are coming from inner city schools. They're at a PWI, so this is the first time that they're, you know, in a classroom of 200 people and they're the only Black person in that space. You've got all of this stuff going on in the world, you know, on top of you got to adjust to a new environment, a new city. I mean, my God, I could go on and on and on, but I'm just really curious to know what that staff component of things looked like for you guys.
So we took it in our committee and just tried to figure out like what are some of the topics that we really truly needed to hit. So some of it, like our beginning ones in the fall, were just the basics of what are some of the definitions of what is diversity, what is inclusion, what is bias. Like we had one whole session on bias, we had a session on microaggressions. And so we just try to figure out what were the topics that we really need to hit. The sessions lasted for about an hour. And in the fall, it was just one session. In the spring, we changed it to where it's the same session, but then we would offer it 2 different times to make sure that everyone could attend. You could choose which one you wanted to go to. I quickly realized a session with 300 people sometimes isn't as productive. So we got creative in doing like small groups, and we would get more conversation from the department and with different staff from the smaller groups. And we would put them in small groups to have conversations and come back to the big group and share. But we used some presenters from campus, and then in the spring, I found different presenters that a couple we paid, a couple were free, that would come in and do something and do the trainings for us virtually. Overall, we felt like they were very good. I'm trying to figure out next what's our next step for next year on how we're going to continue it. We just did finish a analysis of our department So we'd never done a diversity and inclusion analysis of our department, and we just went through that. So that included a survey for our students, a survey for our staff and coaches, as well as small focus groups. And we have an outside consultant who's working on that for us, and she'll come back and share all the results. So we'll get that probably mid-month next month in July. And then from some of those findings, we'll go and create what we're going to do for next year and continue that education.
Cool. Okay, we got a couple of questions coming in. So
yeah, we got some good questions. One came through that I'm sorry, because I feel like we sped past it, and it's as an alumni, one of my most favorite features of our athletic department, so much so that I served there under membership, and that's the Dodie Anderson Academic Enrichment Center. And so the question was, what happens there? What does it look like? What is it? So Maria, I'll let you answer.
Great question. So Dodie Academic Center is our facility for our student athletes, and they come and do all their academic work. So we hire tutors and mentors, or we call them academic coaches now, but some of them are undergrad students, some are teachers within the community, and they come in and they assist our student athletes with their coursework. And so we have 8 full-time academic advisors, 5 what we call learning specialists. Our student athlete development office is housed in there. And that is the space where they can come in. There's computer labs, they can print for free, but all their academic work for our student athletes will be housed in the Dodie Academic Center. And so, yep, Dominique was great. She came in, she was like an academic coach for us. She did a great job and worked with our students. And we do a lot of ours is one-on-one, where a lot of schools will do more like group study hall sessions. But a lot of our tutoring is one-on-one. So our students are getting that individual attention that they need based on the subject that they need it in.
very cool. So I'm going to ask this.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to ask this.
I'm sorry.
No.
The next question is a really big one, Maria, because, and it comes from one of our former BAC members. What or how do young women, especially Black women, girls of color, interested in a role like yours, what do they do? What classes or experiences do they need to have? How do we get Black girls, Black women into these spaces?
Yep, you got to get your foot in the door, whatever that is. And so whether it's in diversity, whether you're trying to be a sport administrator, you just got to get your foot in the door. And so for me, academics was a passion for me. So that was my way of getting in the door. I knew at some point I wanted to be administrator. I didn't know when it would occur. And so like for me, when I was in Louisville, I volunteered as a graduate assistant and was not getting paid. So I had like 3 other jobs, still getting my classes done, but this was my way to get my foot in the door. And I had great mentors who helped me get to where I am now. So the biggest thing is whether you come in and be a tutor, whether you volunteer in the department, in one of our many departments within athletics, you just have to get your foot in the door and then you work your way. But if you have a specialty, whether it's compliance or development, I mean, look within athletics, there's a lot of different things. I'm pretty sure you have some skills in one of those areas, or you have a specialization in one of those areas, and you got to figure out how to get in.
And Cedric also asks, are there any particular experiences he has a nonprofit that he could provide to create this pipeline to these roles?
Yeah, I mean, we should just tell him to email me.
Okay.
Seriously though, reach out to me.
We got you. We'll get you Maria's contact information.
Reach out to me, and then I'll have a conversation with you and we can figure that out.
Sounds good. We love, and that's what this space is about. We want to make these connections. We want to support connecting our alumni with you, Maria, and with the department, and serving it any way we can. So that's exciting. Shayla, do you have any more questions on your end? You're on mute, baby.
I know, I was like, wait a minute, I'm talking and I'm on mute. So actually, yeah, I want to kind of go back a little bit and talk about when you said that, you were doing this work 3 years ago, right? And nobody had a single idea, like a single clue. So I just want to know if you can talk a little bit more about like, what was that work that you were doing? And then, it was interesting again when I saw that, athletics had this like chief diversity officer. There was a part of me that like never in my wildest dreams thought, oh yeah, absolutely. Athletics should have a chief diversity officer. So can you talk a little bit more about, the work that you were doing before, behind the scenes, and now coming into this role where you're front and center, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And I think like back then you were doing it, but I don't think not that people didn't take it as serious, but they look at it differently now. And I think the NCAA the NCAA and our conferences are making more of a push to try to have a more diverse like staffs and administration. Because for me, it's important for our students to see people who look like them in positions that are making decisions. And so I think now, not that it wasn't important then, but I think we're just at a different level at it now. So the importance for it for me has always been there because I've always been a Black woman. I can't run from that. So this has been my experience in life. I've always had to deal with it. There's been times I've been the only person of color in the room. So it's like, how can I do things to help the person who comes behind me? So I think that was my motivation 3 years ago, and it still is now. I just think it's a little heightened now, if that makes sense. But if you look around the league, like conferences, the NCAA, there's more of a push to make sure that people of color and women are having more opportunities than we have in the past. And so I think not that they want to put pressure on people, but they're challenging people to think differently. And I think that's the key. Diversity is not a bad thing. It's how you look at it. It's how you embrace what it's brought to the table, because something that's different is not always bad, but sometimes people look at it that way. And so it's how do you get people to think different about some of the things that they're doing so that the company and our department can also embrace our students. Because that's important for me. If you don't have people who look like our students, they're going to still be isolated. Who's going to connect with them? And I think it's getting people to understand that helps create some of that change.
All right. So another question that has come, you've mentioned that sometimes you are the only Black woman in the room, or sometimes our students are the only Black students in their class, or this is their first experience in predominantly white environments or institutions. And what advice would you give to students who find themselves in those underrepresented groups, whether that's the only minority, the only woman, the only LGBTQ person in the room or meeting? What have you learned that helps get our voices heard by leadership and people at that table or in those spaces?
Don't be afraid to speak up. And I know at times you're like, dang, they're gonna be like, here she goes again. Because I think that sometimes they probably like, here goes Maria again. But you're right, here goes Maria again with a great point. So you gotta just be confident. That's what I always say, be confident, know your stuff. Because a lot of times if you don't know your stuff, then you say something that may not be completely accurate. Then that next time you're overlooked, or she doesn't know what she's doing, that type of thing. So you just got to make sure you're on, and it puts pressure on you because you feel like you always have to be right. And that's not it. If you don't know, say, I'll get back to you. Like, that's okay. But I think you just have to know your surroundings, be confident in who you are. I think that takes time to get there, to know who you are and being confident in who you are, but have a voice. And that's hard sometimes, especially when you're younger. It takes time to get there, but once you have that voice and you know what you're talking about, people won't look at you. When you walk in the room, your presence will be known. That makes sense.
Good one. Someone wanted to go back to your question about, not the question, the conversation we were having about the work that you've been doing. And they want to know, why do you feel like it's not publicized and that more people, or that it takes spaces like this for people to know what you're doing?
Yeah, that's great. I think some of that falls on me because I told them earlier, I don't like talking about myself. So there's times that I'll get stuff done and I'll do it, and I don't share with, like, outside of the athletic department of things that we've done. And Julia Williams told me that, Maria, you got to tell people that you've done that. Like, that needs to be known. And so I think some of that does fall on me, is to make sure that people in the community and on campus know some of the things that we're doing over here in athletics. And I think at times for me, it's like, I know the progress that I've made here, but I don't think I understand the emphasis that it will have on the community or other people. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that. So I take full responsibility of that, because I think I can do a better job of sharing what we've done. But also in the department, I don't think we do a great job of telling our story. We have great student athletes who do a lot of great things, and there's times we don't always share that as much as we should. So I think that is an area that we can come up, and we can do more. And thanks for challenging me. Well, I'll do that.
Well, and I feel like you've already taken a step, because tonight, being in this space, as I shared with you before we got started, how necessary it is and how grateful we are to have you here tonight to share what you've been doing. So you're taking steps, you're getting there. All right, so we got a couple questions that have rolled in, which is really good, y'all. Keep them coming. So the next question is from Samantha Miller. She said she recently graduated from law school and she loves helping people, especially minorities. She graduated from U of SC in 2017 with a degree in English. Is there someone who advises and assists athletes in the athletic department with the recruitment to professional sports?
Yes. So that's sort of our student athlete development, but then it's also sometimes some of the staff, depending on which team they are on. So like football has a couple people who will help those guys. And then basketballs will as well have a couple people on their staff who will help them when it comes to, trying to make decisions and figure out, are you going to leave early, or what the next step is with combine and all that kind of stuff. So we do have some people on staff who can assist our students with that next level when it's time to go professional.
All right. The next question is, do you meet with recruits, or do you just start working with student athletes once they reach us? And if you do reach recruits, what kind of questions do they have for you? Or what do you tell them or share with them?
Great question. So I don't meet with the recruits as often starting this year, but before I've met with almost every football, basketball recruit. Yeah, I meet all the time with recruits. There's a ton of questions. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, you get a gamut of them, from academic talk. They ask about majors, what professions they can go in from those majors. Parents have a lot of questions about the resources we offer, as far as the tutoring we explained. Parents also ask about like attendance in class. We do hire class checkers, so we check class attendance. They ask about travel, how much class they will miss. Just all the resources that we offer, any type of like student athlete development, life skills type stuff that we do. And we do have mandatory programming. So it's not just about going to class and playing your sport. They do financial education. We teach them how to dress. They receive a suit. So women can pick out a skirt or a pantsuit. Men are picking out a tie. They receive a suit that they have that's free of charge. We do a networking night. We do resume workshops, LinkedIn workshops. And so it's just telling parents how we're trying to make those students be better when they leave here than they were. But it's also job placement, helping with internships and externships and that kind of stuff. Graduate school, if they're interested in that, helping them prepare for the GRE or their GMAT or whatever exam it may be to complete their application. I mean, you get a gamut of questions, and you get, how is the city? I mean, I will say I've had some parents of color say, especially when the Confederate flag was coming down, will my son be safe here? And I'm a person, I don't lie. So I'm gonna tell you the truth. Like, we really haven't had a ton of student athletes who had to deal with, being called out of their name, or, dealing with a lot of racial things while they were here. Of course, there's some things here or there, but for the gamut of it, they've been okay while they've been here. So you have parents ask you a lot of, and the students as well, but you have a wide range of questions from resources to campus to where to live to coaches, all the above.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. The next question is, Dawn Staley and Adia Barnes made history as Black women head coaches when they reached the women's Final Four this past April. You talked about what specifically you talked about it, but what specifically, in your opinion, can be done or should be done to make sure that representation is there in those D1 head coaching roles, as well as the Power 5 conferences, AD roles and roles like yours? What do you feel like can be done?
Right. I think you have to start with the conversation to at least make the people who are making decisions aware of the need. And I think that's where it starts. I mean, if you look at the SEC just passed some legislation where that's mandatory now. So when you're hiring administrative or some head coaches, you're going to have a conversation with the commissioner, Greg Sankey, on what was your protocol on filling that position. And you need to have a diverse pool when you call him so that you can say, this is what we did, these were our protocols, but we're now in the SEC going to be accountable for making sure we have diversity. And again, you got to hire the best person. So we're not saying just go hire a Black person to put a Black person in the seat, or go hire a woman to put a woman in the seat. You know, we just want to make sure that people are taking the initiative, and that you're at least aware and going out of your way to create a diverse pool and give people an opportunity to at least interview. And so I think the SEC has made a big step in creating this legislation that they just passed to say, you know, we're going to hold you accountable. You're going to have a conversation with the commissioner on what you're doing when it's time to fill these roles. And so I think they're going to put some education stuff along with it. So it's not just about go do it. It's going to be, how can we support you with that as well?
And that's very interesting, you know, because I do know that the SEC, when it comes to women basketball head coaches, is the most diverse in the country. So for them to even take it a step further to make sure that, you know, we're not just stopping at women's basketball, but we're making sure that all of our sports has representation of Black head coaches and Black coaches in those positions. I think that's really powerful to hear. And hopefully other Power 5 conferences and conferences around the NCAA in general will follow that lead.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
All right. The next question is, since you like basketball, how has, and not, she doesn't just like basketball, I'll say as well, y'all, she is the administrator for women's basketball for us. How has UofSC encouraged the NCAA to treat women with equity, the same equity as the men when it comes to facilities and accommodations, such as what we saw in the NCAA tournament? And we saw Coach Don Staley write a passionate letter to the NCAA, I think it was the commissioner maybe, when all of that happened. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think she did a great job in writing that statement, and I was with them out there, so the discrepancies were there. But I do think that not only the students having a voice, but coaches having a voice, administrators having a voice. I mean, the NCAA created that panel, so it was, you know, get on and share your thoughts on what we can do outside of just the basketball situation. I do think that there's room to come up. I don't think, I think Dawn said it the best, because I think it's bigger than just having a weight room. It was bigger than just the food at that at the tournament. I think there's things that we can do, like she brought up the use of the logo March Madness. So I think there's things that we can do to create a better environment for some of our women that's equal to what the men have. Yeah, there's a lot there. I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot there. I do think. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there's a follow-up to that too, because someone said, but doesn't Title IX ensure that or not?
So Title IX does, but Title IX, when it comes to like the NCAA tournament, I think is a little different. But on campuses, like I said here, we're good. I mean, our women are getting everything that our men are getting, whether it's nutrition, mental health services, the academic services. None of that changes or differs by gender. Uniforms are the same. Practice times. I mean, we even look at practice times. We look at how we travel. We look at all of that, and our women are treated the exact same as our men. So they have those exact same opportunities. And again, I'm speaking for the University of South Carolina. Judy Van Horn oversees our Title IX, and she does a great job of working with each coach to make sure scholarship allotments are good, and that, and again, like I said, our AD did a great job when he took over of making sure facilities were equal when it came to each sport. So I think each sport has had some type of renovation, if not a new facility created in his 10 years here of being an AD. And I think that speaks volumes, because it's not just poured into football, which is a lot of the revenue, it's every sport. And I think our student athletes can see that and they can feel that. And that makes a difference.
That's great. Thank you. The next question is, what can we do as alumni with the mentoring of African-American student athletes while they're at the University of South Carolina?
Great question. We actually have, if you're a former student athlete, we have a mentor program where we can connect some of our current student athletes with a mentor of a former student athlete, of an alum. And some of those are based off of their interest, their career interest, or we've had some say, hey, I'm from California, can you connect me with some alum from California? So it just depends on what you're looking for. I think we got to do a better job of getting outside of the athletic alum and figuring out how we can connect with other alum. So I'm open to suggestions. So if y'all have them, let me know, because like I said, we do a networking night. We're always looking for people, whether they're alum or businesses within the community who can come and connect. We have a Beyond Sports internship program. So we're always looking for internships, and you don't have to pay the student, we'll pay the student. You just got to give them an opportunity. So we're always looking for ways to connect and get our students involved. So totally open for any alum that has anything that they would love to partner with us with.
All right. So hang in there with us, Maria. We got a couple more questions for you. The next question is, can you talk more about the importance of developing a well-rounded student athlete and how y'all do that in our department, and really emphasizing community and service?
Yep. The thing that I've learned is whether a student tells you this or not, they want structure. And so we have a very structured program when they come into academics, where as a freshman or a transfer, you have study hall automatically, you don't get a choice. So you may think you don't need a math tutor, you're going to get a math tutor until you can prove to me you don't need it. And so that's just been our philosophy, but that's also made us successful. And so it's providing that structure that we're going to have a set study hall for each team. We call it objective-based study hall. So it's teaching you how to read the syllabus. It's teaching you how to plan out what you have to do. It's teaching you how to plan your day and use your time effectively. As a student athlete, that's the thing you have the least of, is time. So we try to teach you very quickly, how do you use that in the best format so that your day is productive and you still have time to take a nap, because that's what they want to do, is take a nap. So it's all about providing that structure for the students and getting them to understand what the expectations are. So it's communicating that from the get-go. You have to say it a couple of times for them to understand and to understand exactly where they need to be. We also have great support from our administration and our coaches. So our coaches are very involved in the structure of things that we do. So we're not on an island on our own trying to preach this. Our coaches are also preaching it. So it starts with recruiting. The students have to have an academic meeting on their official visit. So they're meeting with us, but they also might meet with a professor in their major. And we're telling them what our expectations are before they actually walk on campus. So when they get here, they've already heard it and we hit the ground running. And that goes with a little bit of everything, not just academic student athlete development, but we feel like if we can teach you holistically how to do that, it's going to carry over into your sport as well. You can't cheat the system academically and think you're going to go perform and be great in your sport. It all goes together, because if you're cheating the system in one area, you're going to cheat the system in the other area. So it's all about trying to teach you how to be that well-rounded individual, that holistic individual, and how it carries over into every pot. That's a long answer, but that's just sort of where.
No, that's a perfect answer and a much needed answer. And it kind of leads into this next question, because the person wants to know what misconceptions about student athletes that you and your team are working hard to dispel, and how you're equipping student athletes to make sure they're successful both on the field or in their sport and professionally and personally.
Yep. Big misconception is that we do work for them. No. No. If you don't do your work, you're going to fail. And I will tell you that. And they have to go to class. And so we have probably one of the strictest class attendance policies in the conference. And so if they don't go to class, they don't play. And so we hold tight to that. You're gonna go to class, you're gonna be a student athlete. It's student before athlete. And so we're very big on that. But I think the biggest misconception is that everything is given to them as a student athlete. They do get a lot, they get gear, they get to travel, but at the same time, they're practicing or they're on a plane or a lot of times a 10-hour bus ride for a lot of our Olympic sports. And that's not glorious, but they're doing homework on that bus ride, or sometimes they're Skyping with a professor or Zooming with a professor to try to get a meeting in. So it's not, people see the games and see the glorious part of it, but there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that they give up that they don't get to get back. And especially like involvement on campus, like that's a big thing, is trying to make sure that they have the opportunity to do Greek life or do clubs or student government on top of everything else that they have. So biggest misconception is things are just given to them. It's not. They do their own work. If they fail, they fail. I would tell a professor, treat them like any other student. They didn't do what they need to do, give them the F. And professors look at me sideways, but they're no different. I mean, they have to live and they have to learn. And I don't remember the second part of the question, sorry.
Hold on, let me go back to it.
Oh, sorry.
Look, I was going with you. You were doing such a great job. I was like, yes, because I got personally touched when they think that people do work for them. So it's like, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
It says, and what tools are you using to equip student athletes in order to make sure that they are successful in their sport as well as personally and professionally?
Yeah, and I think coaches do a lot with the sport on making sure they get everything they need and learn and that kind of stuff, film study. But personally, it's a lot of our student athlete development stuff. It's the seminar. So each year they have a mandatory seminar they go through. Like I said, that financial education, the networking night, the resume workshops, the LinkedIn workshops, teaching them how to dress properly. We've even talked about hair and makeup and working on that. So it's that kind of stuff to prepare them for what's next. But it's also, like I said, the time management, learning how to use a planner, learning how to plan your day, making sure that, you have a 2-hour break. Am I going to take a nap? Am I going to do my paper? Trying to plan ahead so that things aren't last minute, especially when it comes to the classroom. So it's teaching them those time management skills, I think, is the biggest thing most of our student athletes struggle with as a freshman. So it's teaching them those tools that once they have that down, they're good to go.
Absolutely. The next question is, what program, so when we think about the whole student athlete, we've talked about academics, we've talked about the things that they're dealing with within their sport, they're showing up in spaces where they're underrepresented. But when we think about the health of students and physical health as well as mental health, what are some programming education that we provide to students just around health and healthy relationships, consent, sexual and reproductive health?
Yeah, great question. We have a sport 101 class that's taught over the sport in entertainment, sport entertainment department. And so one of the professors teaches that, and it's almost like a university 101, but it's for student athletes. So it's like student athlete experience. Anyone can take the class, but it's almost like an extension of our orientation for our student athletes. And so a lot of those topics that you just asked about, mental health, sexual orientation, consent, student conduct, integrity, Title IX, we have all of that in that class. And so the sport department will work with partners on campus and bring presenters in to speak about all of that stuff. And so our students are getting it over here, but then when you get it in that class and it's not as rushed and you're actually hearing some of the stories and the details and the resources that are available on campus, it's another way for them to get additional information. So most of our freshmen and our transfers take that class and they're getting that additional information. We do have sports psychologists on staff. So I think we are up to 4 now. I think it's 4. We just hired someone and that's free. So if any student athlete wants to have a conversation and meet with someone, or if they need testing for ADD or ADHD, that they can do that. All of those services are free. They're going through depression or anxiety or eating disorders. We have nutritionists that will help plan out the menus that for the food that's served in the DOTI, but then also help teams with food planning and meals on the road and that kind of stuff. So again, all of those services are free to any of our student athletes. We have athletic trainers. So they're there when our students are practicing, but a lot of times our students, if something else is going on outside of that practice, they're calling that trainer to say, hey, I don't feel good, my stomach hurts, I feel like I got the flu, whatever it may be. And we will set them up to have appointments with doctors or go up to the health center on campus. So all of those services are available for our student athletes. And we're continuously trying to make sure that they are utilizing them, especially with this COVID year, with depression and being quarantined and being away from folks, and just making sure that they have an outlet to have someone to speak to.
Thank you, because that was a really good question. The next question is, as a Cato officer, I think there is a lot we can learn from you and your role in athletics as to how we can support underrepresented students in our area. Do you see similarities and possibilities? You are doing amazing work. She is.
Do I see similarities and possibilities? Is that
For
that
the connection between, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, because the same students that are down here in athletics are the ones that they're working with within their department with those Cato officers. And so, yes, I do see similarities. And even some of the students who are not athletes, I used to teach University 101. A lot of the things that students that are not student athletes are going through are the same things our student athletes are going through. So I do feel like that there is a connection there, that we could probably do a better job, or I can do a better job to say like, hey, the students in your area, you may want to check on them. I've tried to do a better job of letting our student athletes know that they have an advocate in their major area in that department, because sometimes they don't realize I have someone else that I can go and speak to. And so for me, it's been over here trying to educate them so that they know who that person is in that unit, in the department that they're going to almost every day.
All right. How often do you connect or collaborate with other SWAs and D&I administrators at other institutions? Also, are there any networking organization that someone that is interested in pursuing a career in this role should join?
Yep. So SWAs, we meet bi-weekly right now, but there's a lot of times you just pick up the phone and say like, hey, what is it y'all are doing? Because we have a pretty close-knit group. So, I mean, you can pick up the phone or email or text any of them at any time. And I do that honestly pretty frequently, just to see what other folks are doing or to get, feedback on things that may be happening on their campus. But as a unit of all 14 schools, we meet bi-weekly and have conversations about different things going on around the league. With diversity, it's a fairly new area with organizations. There is one for diversity officers that just started, it might have been the beginning of this year, DICE, DICEE is it. Again, it's a very small group, but, well, it's not really a small group because it's probably at least 150 or so on there. But that's been a great group of other people that are doing diversity work in college athletics. And it's all different levels from D1 to D3. And we just share ideas. There's different subcommittees and different subgroups, and you just share ideas. And there's an agenda. We usually meet at least once a month. But it's a great group of folks that are, again, we're all in the same boat. We're all, fighting that battle. And it all looks different on each institution. But sometimes when you can pick someone else's brain and see what they're doing and ideas that they have, it helps you out as well.
Thank you. So the next question is, I've been trying to save this one for the end because it's very lighthearted. But can you give us a prediction on, right now we're in NBA season and the NBA playoffs are happening and they want your opinion about the finals?
Ooh, see, this year looks different because there's no Steph Curry, there's no LeBron. It just looks different. I was really pulling for the Nets, but Kyrie just went down. So I don't know if they will make it if he doesn't come back. So my prediction is a question mark right now because I was really pulling for him.
Okay, well, this one is easier because I'm sure you can get this one right. So WNBA MVP, your prediction.
Asia. Yeah, she's killing it again.
Back to back, I think so, right?
Yeah.
That was a good question. All right, the next one is, what is the most rewarding part of what you do?
Oh, the students, by far. graduation, I've always said, is like my favorite day. It's my favorite day, but my saddest day, because you see them finally obtain a goal that they worked for, and they came in, so big-eyed and, not sure they were going to make it. And then you tell them, hey, these 4 years are going to fly by. And then they're like, dang, it did. So graduation, I think, is my biggest, I love it. But then it's sad because you think about they're leaving, you're not going to see them every day. But it's definitely the students, and they make it rewarding when you're tired and you're frustrated, and then one of them does well on something and they call you or text you. That just makes your day. Yeah.
Fun. Do you feel like students, kind of back to students, do you feel like they are compensated enough, or that they should receive more compensation from, their jersey sales or using their likeness in the sports that they play?
Yeah, I think that's common. I mean, the NIL, the name, image, and likeness, that's here. I do think universities attain a lot of money, and you do have coaches who have big contracts and make a ton of money. I think it has to be done the right way, and so it's equipping these students with not being taken advantage of. I do think a lot of students think they're just going to go make a bunch of like thousands of dollars right off of this. It's just educating them to make sure that they understand everyone's not going to get the same amount of money if money is out there. But I do think they deserve it. I do think they deserve something from what they're bringing in from the sport that they're working on and that they're competing in, because there's a lot of money. There is a lot of money. There's a lot of money that's spent on them that sometimes I don't think they realize. When it comes to all the resources they have here, a lot of that money is being covered with some of the resources they have. But at the same time, I do feel like students deserve to be paid for their name and what they bring to the university. It's just making sure, for me, it's making sure that they're educated properly so that they're not taken advantage of. That's important.
All right. And the last one is not really a question. Somebody went back to our conversation about the NBA and they said they think it's time for Chris Paul to win a championship.
It is. I do like Chris Paul. That's a good point. I hope he can get close if he doesn't get it.
Like you said, I'm just really torn. This season looks different, and it's hard to say. It's just hard to say. So I think it's going to be one of those wait and see type things.
Yep.
Well, that takes care of all of our questions in the Q&A box. We really appreciate your time, Maria. Like we said, there's also another comment that just came and said, thanks for being awesome and thanks for leading us in the athletic department. And so we're just really proud of you, and we're proud to have you on tonight to share with other alumni the work that you're doing and have been doing and will continue to do for our student athletes. So I want to thank you. Everyone is saying grateful for your time. Cedric says he will be talking to you soon. So we're really excited just about the connections that have been made here tonight and the information that was shared to help people get a better understanding of your role and everything that you do to serve our university. So I'm going to turn it back over to Shayla.
Hopefully,
Shayla, do you have anything?
Ring. Let me tell you, I've been in this conference room for many years, and that is the first time that phone has rang. And I'm, of course, that would happen tonight while we're being recorded and it's live.
It's okay. My lights went off, so we got dark. I was trying to move, turn my lights back on.
I was just like, are you kidding me right now? But, we have another, so thank you. Excellent presentation. God bless all of you. Keep up the excellent work. You inspire me. Well, thank you, Samantha. Real quick, I just, want to end with, do you have a direct challenge that you kind of want to issue out to alumni to help you in any way that we possibly can in terms of athletics? I know you mentioned, you guys have a lot of, I was like looking down at my notes to remember the name of the program that you guys have that connects athletes with alumni and community members. But what's a challenge that you have for us? We can kind of give back to you and your department.
Yes, that's a great question. I think the challenge would be how to get us more involved with all alum and not just alum with student athletes. And so for me is I'm going to reach out to you all to say, what are internship opportunities? Do you have any job opportunities? What are other alum doing that I can bring back and speak to our student athletes and incorporate into our programming? So I think that is the challenge, is, you know, are you a local school and we can do community service? Like, there's so many things that are out there that we can touch and partner with, is figuring out, you know, how to do it and do it the right way.
Great, awesome. All right, Dominique, you heard that right. She said schools.
We've been to our school before, we'll come back.
So for everybody out there who's going to be watching this, and for those of you who have joined us tonight, I think that that's just an awesome thing that you guys have going on. I know I will definitely be reaching out to learn more about this internship program that you have, because I didn't even know about that. Like, I literally wrote that down and underlined it like 3 times on my paper. But thank you so much for joining us this evening, for taking the time to answer all of our questions. I know that we had a lot of questions still left on the table, so you know what that means. It means that we got to bring you back and have another conversation.
I'll be happy to.
And yeah, sorry, I thought Dominique was saying something, but we are just so appreciative of you taking the time. We know that an hour and a half on a Monday is a lot to ask of you, because we know that you are a very busy woman. So please know from the bottom of our hearts, we are so thankful for you taking the time to speak with those of us who joined us tonight. I think I dropped some links into the chat box to follow BAC on social media. Please reach out to any one of the council members if you have any questions about what it is that we do, programs that we offer. We're here to help, we're here to answer. And with that, I'm just going to say good night, everyone. Enjoy.
Thank you all for having me. Good job.
Thank you, Maria.
Thanks, Maria.
Have a good night. Thank everyone for joining.